Not many people know this. Keanu Reeves, you trained as a ballroom dancer.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't.
Imagine spending years rebuilding your career, only to realize the very thing that brought you back into the spotlight was slowly breaking you down. That's the unbelievable twist in Keanu Reeves' story. A man known for generosity, quiet strength, and staying far away from Hollywood drama, suddenly finding himself pushed to his absolute limit by the role fans loved the most. For almost a decade, Keanu poured everything he had into John Wick. The discipline, the emotion, the pain, the intensity. And while the world celebrated each new film, cheering every perfectly choreographed fight and every impossible stunt, something entirely different was happening behind the scenes. Keanu wasn't just acting. He was pushing his body past exhaustion, carrying emotional weight most people never saw, and quietly battling a pressure that kept building with every new chapter. And recently, he finally admitted just how close it all came to ending not just the franchise, but his entire career. How does a role this iconic become a burden so heavy, even Keanu thought about walking away forever? And what really happened during the filming that pushed him to his breaking point? Let's get into the story he almost never told. Now, what makes this story even more surprising is that Keanu wasn't supposed to be in a position where anything could end his career in the first place. He had already lived through the peaks and valleys of Hollywood, surviving the unpredictable climb of fame long before John Wick was ever imagined. But the truth is, by the early 2010s, Keanu's career wasn't exactly in a place most people think it was. Sure, everyone respected him. Sure, he was still beloved. But the momentum he once had after the Matrix trilogy had slowed down. Roles weren't hitting the same. Big studios weren't lining up the way they used to. His name still carried weight, but the shine wasn't as bright. And that quiet fading is what makes the next part so unreal. Because right when it seemed like Hollywood had shifted its focus to younger action faces, Keanu was searching for a story that meant something. A character he could fully commit to, something different from the worlds he had already shaped. And that search is exactly what opened the door to John Wick. But he didn't walk through it expecting a global phenomenon. In fact, no one did. The expectations were so low that some insiders quietly believed the movie would barely make a sound. Yet, the moment Keanu read the script, everything changed for him. It wasn't the action, it wasn't the guns, and it wasn't even the revenge narrative that hooked him. It was the heart, the emotional core, the quiet pain beneath Wick's silence. And Keanu connected to that on a level he didn't talk about publicly at the time. That connection pulled him in deeper than anyone realized, setting him on a path that would revive his career and eventually push him further than he ever should have gone. But that renewal didn't happen instantly. It happened in a way no one saw coming. And that's where the twist begins. The moment John Wick hit theaters, something unbelievable happened. A movie everyone assumed would be just another small action flick suddenly exploded into a cultural moment. Audiences didn't just like it, they became obsessed with it. The tight combat, the emotional stillness, the world building, the style, everything felt fresh. And the surprising part? Keanu became the face of modern action all over again, almost overnight. That sudden resurgence didn't just revive his career, it reshaped it. For the first time in years, Keanu wasn't just back. He was leading a new era of action cinema. Directors started calling again. Fans reclaimed him as the internet's favorite humble celebrity. And studios realized they had underestimated him badly. Yet while the spotlight felt warm, Keanu approached it with his usual quiet gratitude. He didn't brag. He didn't celebrate loudly. He didn't make big statements about being back. He simply worked harder. But behind the humility was a new weight he didn't expect. Because once the first film became a hit, the pressure didn't just increase, it multiplied. People expected each sequel to be bigger, faster, deeper, and more intense. And Keanu, being who he is, refused to give anything less than everything he had. He trained longer, pushed harder, learned more complex choreography, performed stunts that most actors wouldn't even consider reading about. He wanted every scene to feel real, every strike to land, every shot to have purpose. And that commitment, while inspiring, quietly started creating a dangerous problem. The deeper he pushed into Wick's world, the more his body and mind absorbed the impact. What began as an artistic passion project slowly transformed into a demanding machine that required more and more of him. And while the audience saw nothing but perfection on screen, Keanu was carrying a growing cost that wouldn't stay hidden forever. That growing cost became clearer with each sequel. The John Wick franchise didn't just raise the bar, it launched it into the stratosphere. Every new film demanded more intricate combat, longer takes, heavier emotional beats, and far more physical punishment. And because Keanu insisted on doing most of his own stunts, the preparation alone became its own full-time battle. Training sessions turned into marathons, hours of gun work, judo, jiu-jitsu, tactical movement, knife choreography, all repeated day after day, sometimes for months. Keanu wasn't just performing, he was reshaping his entire physical condition to keep up with a character who never seemed to tire. And while fans loved the realism, the toll on Keanu's body kept stacking. Bruises, strains, cuts. They became normal. Some days he pushed through exhaustion so heavy, it bordered on dangerous. But the physical side wasn't the only challenge. Keanu has always talked about how much emotional intention he puts into his roles. And John Wick, Beneath the Bullets and Chaos, is a story built on grief. That means every film required Keanu to tap into painful emotional spaces repeatedly, sometimes for weeks at a time. And carrying that weight, combined with the physical grind, created a level of exhaustion he struggled to talk about publicly. What made it harder is that Keanu is known for being kind, humble, and deeply respectful of everyone on set. So even when he was hurting, even when he could barely move after a stunt day, he pushed through it silently. He didn't complain. He didn't slow down production. He didn't let anyone know how drained he really was. But the truth is, the franchise had become bigger than anyone expected, and the pressure to keep that standard alive was slowly becoming unbearable. By the time filming for the fourth movie rolled around, that pressure finally reached its breaking point. And that breaking point would lead to a decision no one thought Keanu would ever make. That breaking point arrived during and after the filming of John Wick Chapter 4. And it wasn't just about exhaustion. It was about survival. Keanu had pushed his body through 3 massively demanding films already, each one escalating the intensity. But Chapter 4 took things somewhere else entirely. The stunt count was off the charts. The choreography was more intricate than ever. And the shoot dragged on longer than previous films, layering fatigue on top of fatigue until even Keanu, a man known for discipline, started to feel the cracks. Crew members later revealed that he would sometimes limp off set, barely able to speak from how drained he was. Physically, he was worn down. Emotionally, he was stretched thin. And creatively, He felt like he had taken Wick as far as he possibly could. That combination pushed him into a place he rarely reaches, the point where he wanted out. Not because he stopped loving the character, but because continuing meant risking more than he was willing to lose. And that's when he did something shocking. According to people close to production, Keanu quietly asked the filmmakers to bring Wick's story to an end, a definitive one. Not a cliffhanger, not a tease, a real ending. Because he believed he had nothing left to give without hurting himself further. That request stunned everyone, but it also showed just how heavy the burden had become. And yet, even as he stepped back from the role, fate had one more twist waiting. A twist that reveals John Wick was almost never supposed to exist in the first place. And yet, even as he stepped back from the role, fate had one more twist waiting. A twist that reveals John Wick was almost never supposed to exist in the first place. And the wildest part? While Keanu was standing at his emotional and physical breaking point, the truth is, the entire John Wick universe almost never existed in the first place. It's strange to think about now, considering how massive the franchise has become. But the very first movie came unbelievably close to being shut down before a single scene was filmed. Not because of creative issues or casting problems, but because of something far simpler: money. The team struggled to secure the final bit of financing needed to start production. Investors weren't convinced a dark, stylized revenge film starring an actor whose career had supposedly slowed down would actually perform. Some even believed it would release quietly and disappear just as fast. And that doubt nearly killed the whole project. The crew waited. The studio hesitated. Time kept running out. But then something unexpected happened. A last-minute rescue that almost feels like a plot twist written for Hollywood. Actress Eva Longoria stepped in with a major financial boost, helping cover a huge portion of the remaining production budget. Her investment became the push that saved the film from collapsing. If she hadn't stepped in, there would be no Baba Yaga, no Continental, no neon-soaked mayhem, and absolutely no comeback moment for Keanu. What makes this moment even more unbelievable is how perfectly it fits into the bigger picture. The franchise was born out of uncertainty, carried forward by unexpected support, and eventually transformed into something no one predicted. And yet, despite surviving all those early challenges, the franchise almost faced a second end, not from money this time, but from the toll it took on its leading man. Because just as the world was celebrating John Wick's rise, Keanu was quietly facing a much more personal struggle. A conflict between what the fans wanted and what his body could continue to endure. And that inner conflict would shape everything that came next. That hidden conflict grew even more complex when the pressure to keep the franchise alive collided with Keanu's natural humility. He's not the type to complain publicly. He isn't someone who makes dramatic statements or uses the media to express frustration. He's known for kindness, understanding, and gratitude. So while fans saw him smiling during interviews and thanking everyone who supported the films, they had no idea how much weight he was carrying behind the scenes. Every sequel meant months of intense preparation, sleepless nights, pain he often ignored, and emotional strain that built up film after film. And because John Wick was no longer just a movie, it was a global brand, the expectations only grew heavier. Studios wanted bigger action. Audiences wanted more impossible stunts. Directors wanted to create fight scenes that no franchise had ever attempted. And Keanu, despite everything, kept giving more. He believed the audience deserved authenticity. He believed Wick's world should feel real. And he believed he owed it to the people who had supported him throughout his entire career. But that level of dedication can become a double-edged sword. When you give so much that you forget to protect yourself, the consequences eventually catch up. It reached a point where Keanu felt torn between two versions of himself: the artist who wanted to honor the character, and the human being whose body was begging for rest. This was no longer about fame or success. It was about whether he could continue without sacrificing something he couldn't get back. And when he finally reached the moment where he confessed to the producers that he couldn't keep going at that level, it wasn't said with anger. It wasn't a negotiation tactic. It was honesty. Quiet, painful honesty. And that honesty opened a new chapter, one filled with uncertainty for both Keanu and the future of the franchise. Even after Keanu asked for Wick's story to be brought to a definitive close, the world around him didn't slow down. The franchise kept expanding. Spin-offs, prequels, universe-building projects. Studios saw John Wick not just as a series, but as a long-term empire. And while Keanu respected the growth, he also understood something deeper. True endings matter. He believed Wick's journey had reached its emotional limit. He believed pushing beyond that moment would cheapen everything the character had gone through. And he believed continuing at the same physical intensity could genuinely put him at risk. So even though fans desperately wanted more, Keanu stepped back, not out of weakness, but out of self-preservation. But here's where things get interesting. Rumors began circulating online, whispers that Keanu might not be done forever. Speculation suggested that if the right story emerged, one that respected Wick's emotional arc without forcing him into endless escalation, he might consider returning in some capacity. Nothing confirmed, nothing guaranteed, but enough buzz to make fans wonder whether Wick's final chapter had truly been written. And while the producers publicly hinted at creative possibilities, Keanu remained silent, choosing peace and recovery over hype. That silence only added more mystery. Would he come back someday? Would he allow Wick to live on through brief appearances, flashbacks, or new storytelling angles? No one knows yet. What's certain is that Keanu walked away from the franchise with something more valuable than another blockbuster. He walked away with control over his well-being, and that decision has earned him even more respect from fans who grew up watching him navigate the highs and lows of Hollywood with integrity. But before we wrap this up, there's one final piece of the story that ties everything together: the strange irony at the heart of the entire journey. And this is where the story circles back to its most bittersweet truth. The role that revived Keanu Reeves' career, the role that reminded the world why he was one of the most beloved, grounded, and genuine actors in Hollywood, was the same role that almost pushed him past his limit. The franchise that lifted him back into global fame was quietly draining him behind the scenes. The character who felt invincible on screen was built on the shoulders of a man who was hurting more than anyone realized. That contrast gives the entire journey a kind of poetic symmetry. Keanu gave John Wick life, and in return, John Wick gave Keanu a renewed career. But everything has a cost, and Keanu eventually realized that no amount of success, money, or global popularity was worth losing himself, physically or emotionally. What makes his story so powerful is that he chose honesty over pressure, humanity over demand, and balance over burnout. He didn't walk away out of frustration. He didn't walk away because he stopped caring. He walked away because he finally understood what he had sacrificed to keep the franchise alive. And he knew it was time to take himself back. And that choice, more than any stunt, fight scene, or blockbuster moment, reveals who Keanu Reeves truly is. Someone willing to give everything, but wise enough to step away when the cost becomes too high. His career didn't end. His legacy didn't weaken. If anything, this chapter made him more admired than ever. And now, fans wait, not for the next gunfight or the next sequel, but for whatever journey Keanu decides to share next. Because if he's shown us anything, it's that the most memorable stories often come from the moments we almost never hear about.